It's Pirate Radio Night. Ha ha ha, me hearties. Whoopee.
We're happy to be here with you in sunny Frinton.
Welcome back to Pirate Radio Night.
All
And this
right.
is the Emperor Roscoe, no less. Give us that big voice of yours.
Have mercy, my man. Can you D-I-G-I-T as you rave to the grave with your musical slave?
There was nobody else like Roscoe on radio.
Let's hear
back
it
in the
for him. What a
1960s.
great guy. Thank you. Bye. Where did you find all these people?
They're wonderful. The audience.
Aren't they,
right,
you
the
know?
audience.
The Yank who can crank, put a little sun on your bun, except today.
Has this guy changed in 40 years? He hasn't really, has he? But you had a great career here.
If we don't have
in the
fun,
UK,
if we don't have fun, what's the point in doing it? But you know, on Caroline, I know that's what, isn't this what it's about?
about Caroline, yeah.
It is. You know, some of the funny stories were, which I don't know if you've heard them, like when Radio England practiced. Do you know that story?
Yeah, I
Where
do, yeah.
They were practicing with all their jingles.
Jingles,
And
yeah.
Johnny Walker was on there under another name, and they were saying, testing, Radio England, and they'd play these very expensive jingles. And I'm up there, and I said to the guys, I said, listen, this ship, 5 miles away is testing. Clear as a bell, we could hear them. So we recorded all
The
their
jingles,
jingles,
yeah.
and we're in the studio all night. We've edited out Radio England, put in Radio Caroline with some sweeps, and we went on the air the next morning with all their jingles, and suffice it to say, dear listener, all hell broke out in London. We were pirates! That's what we did best, you know.
This is Simon D. talking to you on behalf of all of us on Radio Caroline, here 4.5 miles away from Felixstowe. Now, what can I tell you about the station? Well, our technical equipment, I suppose. Firstly, the transmitters are made by Continental Electronics in the States and are 10 kilowatts each, 2 of them costing about £50,000 each. And they will shortly be looped together, I expect, to give us a stronger signal when all the boffins are finished working on them. The studio itself consists of various equipment, tape recorders, record players, of course, basically, and a mixer. The record players are made by Gates, costing about £500 each. To me, it probably means more to you. It's 168 feet high from the deck, or near 200 feet from sea level, I suppose. It is, in fact, the tallest mast on a ship in the world, one piece. It costs a lot of money. Generators, well, of course, they supply the power not only for our signal, but also for the ship. They're made by Mercedes-Benz. There are 2 of them downstairs. No, 3, actually. There's another one in the engine room. Transmission hours, well, as you know, we go from 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 at night, and from 5 past midnight till 3 a.m. at the moment, making, 18 hours a day, or 17 hours 55. Studio staff, radio staff, well, there's 4 DJs, about 5 electronic brains mixing with their work with panel operating, engineer side. We all do shift work. At the moment, we are just about to start a shift work on the DJ side anyway, of 2 weeks on and 1 week off. The crew number about 11, I think, 12 perhaps, with the cook, and of course the captain, who's up there on the bridge most of the time. Record library, about 8,000 records, and many miles of tapes, which of course we change every so often when we find a tune we like. Well, you know, we're here to stay. We've managed to fight the British government and win, and the GPO and the customs and generally everybody else. And thank you once more for your interest in our station. And from me now, and all of you, to all of you, from all of us, bye-bye.
So
What about the music back there? I mean, was it better? Was it good?
All
What was
right.
it like? What was it
Well,
like?
we all know that Radio Caroline was basically the first top 40, if not officially called top 40, radio station playing music that the BBC only played an hour of a week. Radio Luxembourg played it in and played it out. You know, it would come in, it would come out. But with Caroline, you got it most of the time. And I was very proud of that. And along came this Irishman named Phil Solomons. And Phil brought into the station when they were having financial difficulties, which, as you know, radio stations have
They
a
do,
tendency
from time to
to go
time.
broke.
Absolutely.
And then villains come in and whatever. He wasn't really a villain, he was a businessman. And he wanted to treat Radio Caroline like the old days of Radio Luxembourg, where you would buy an hour. The Philips record company, the Decca record company, would buy an hour of time and play all their music, good, bad, or indifferent. And you suffered it because there was nothing else. So Phil would send out this great packet of records every week on the tender. And I am a music lover and the pirate first above all. And, you know, I would go in, I listen to all these major minor records that he would send out, The Bachelors, and I'm going, this is a rock and roll radio station, for Christ's sake. So nobody was looking. I would open and bolt the porthole in the studio, take the records, every week.
Into the sea.
Into the ocean, lock it up again. So, you know, the first week, I'm sure Phil Solomon is, you know, too busy to pay much attention. He's looking at his sales returns. And, you know, geez, we're not selling anything. Nobody else on the planet's playing that rubbishy record. Why aren't my lads playing it? I own, you know, 40% of the station.
Fantastic.
So after a few weeks of this, he finally, can't remember who was in charge of the music. It kind of changed. DLT was in charge for a while, music director of Caroline. Can't remember. And they got the word, they said to Phil, they said, well, Phil, we don't have the records, but they came out in the tender, and I was always there with the mail, collecting the mail. I recognized that box. I quickly had to get it. There'd be one or two good ones. All the rest, up in the porthole, out the window.
All right.
Finally, somebody caught me doing it and told Phil, it's Roscoe, he's throwing the records out the porthole. And he went. I got fired. Every time I would come in, I'd get fired, and I'd go say goodbye to Ronan O'Reilly. I'd say, Ronan would say, well, what do you mean you're leaving? I said, Phil Solomon's fired me. He said, well, I'm hiring you again. Get back out there. Now what's Phil going to do, right? Because I'm back out there again, out there going. So he said, lock up the records. Lock them up. Don't let that effing American get his hands on them. So Caroline started playing the rubbish. But they would, when I'd come in the studio to do my show, they weren't in the studio anymore.
I never remember you playing that sort of stuff. Anyway, Roscoe, thanks for talking to us.
We're now going to see what it was like to spend a whole day on Radio Caroline in the 1980s. You're on Pirate Radio Night.
Let the love and awareness sound gently kiss your ears on Caroline.
Live from the North Sea on 963 kHz, this is Caroline 319. It's 6 o'clock. It's one of those mornings I just can't wake up this morning.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth on 963 kilohertz medium wave. Europe's voice of loving awareness is Radio Caroline.
It is an immaculate ship. It is really the most amazing ship that I've ever seen. And it's perfect for the job. I mean, had I gone to built that ship and said, look, you know, build a radio ship, they couldn't have done a better job. It's unbelievable. I mean, I don't know whether you lads have been on when it's been rough, but it does not move. I mean, it is absolutely solid, which is really, really staggering. And when there's the heavy wind, it's sort of, because that huge mast is sort of held, the wind kind of holds it. And so the sea doesn't have any effect, whereas I suppose that mast wasn't on it, it would be moving a lot more, but the mast sort of acts as a sort of stabilizer. And so the thing just sits there perfectly. It's really extraordinary.
01-897-6203. In the United Kingdom, that's 01-897-6203. Priority Air Freight is a member of the Association of International Air Couriers.
With album tracks live from the North Sea, this is Radio Caroline. Dave Richards for a Sunday morning, 20 to 8. We'll have the news from Newsweek, reported by Jay Jackson at 8 o'clock. 7:30, we started with David Knopfler, with Madonna's daughter, Christopher Cross, sailing, and that's the new album, #1 in the Caroline Countdown this week. For Roger Glover and The Mask with Fake It.
The captain wakes me at about 4:30, pretty ungodly hour to get up in the morning. Usually the typical day starts around 15 minutes later, 4:45. Make tea, go to the library, choose this morning's records for on air at about 6 o'clock. Sort through the mail, any mail that needs sorting out, listen to some new material that regularly comes on board. and on air for usually in the studio about 10 to 6. After that, run through the day's advertising logs, sign and time those. Then at 10 o'clock, usual thing is to come off air, all the records away that I've used throughout that day. And usually after that, I must admit, it's usually a couple of hours sleep. Not being a terribly early evening person, I like to go to bed about midnight, so a couple of hours sleep. Midday, usually a snack, watch a couple of videos. Any more mail that needs to be sorted, then we go through that, the whole team, sort out times, dedications, that sort of thing. Mail that comes on board is taken very seriously. It's the only feedback we have. We haven't got a phone or anything, so that's the only time that we get to any audience reaction, obviously, is simply by mail. So audience response from the mail department is very, very strong. Mail, on average, is very good. Some mail you just can't go into too deeply because it is very personal. Some of the mail that does come out, they go into encyclopedic ways and means about the families, entirely what they do, which is very good because a normal station doesn't usually get that sort of very personal response, and usually that's how we try to come across, and I think we get the sort of feedback that we generally deserve on that front.
With a constant variety of music, this is Radio Caroline.
We get an awful lot of support from the record companies. A lot of material we get up front, which is very, very handy. So that also gets a very fair airing. So that normally takes us through till about 10. Usually, though, during the day, it's sunny, so if it happens to be sunny, we do spend some of the time loafing around a little bit on deck sunbathing, usually.
Caroline.
Let the love and awareness sound gently kiss your ears on Caroline.
With a constant variety of music, this is Caroline on 319. That's 10cc's Wall Street Shuffle there, and before that we had Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, Talking Loud and Clear, Tom Robinson Band's Too Good to Be True, and starting off with Roxy Music's Love is the Drug. Okay then, live from the North Sea on 963 kilohertz, this is Caroline 319. It's now 11 o'clock. The atmosphere on board is one of the most important things, and that's as good now as it ever was. We're getting so much more mail from the continent now than we used to in the past. We used to get a lot before, don't get me wrong, but now on this new ship, Caroline is purely a European Caroline, whereas before we used to have the Dutch service during the daytime, which is predominantly for the continentals, and the English Caroline at night, so most of our mail, not all of it, but a lot came from the British Isles. But now it's one European station, and we get a fantastic response from the continent and from Britain as well, about 50-50 or so, but it's far more European now than it used to be.
Caroline is now playing live in Amsterdam.
And basically, everything has its own individual volume control. And the levels are brought up here so we can see what we're doing, so we don't overload any amplifiers on the way to the transmitter. 2 turntable pots are here, and volume controls for the cartridge machines, volume controls for the next studio in there, which we can bring in, our microphone, the news microphone, monitor, and basically we can queue up the records by listening on this other channel, which is more or less a spare channel, so we can find the beginning of records. As you see, also we have remote controls here that we can start the turntables with remotely. We have another option on here too, where we can listen either off the air or off the panel. You'll hear there's quite a difference here. Processed, of course, for a very small 4-inch speaker. This is cheating here, this JBL. It's an easy board to operate, or desk, and this is very common in the States. It's an old tube unit or a valve unit, but it's very common in the States. You see these all over the place. There's the name there, Gates. When it leaves the studio, it goes down into the transmitter room, just parallel wires and a shielded cable. It hits a box called an optimod, which is nothing more than a modified limiter and compressor. What it does is makes the sound more dense. It takes out this motion in the VU meter. It compresses it to where it almost stands still. It doesn't even look like audio coming out. But what it does is make the signal actually louder on a small radio. That's the advantage of having the black box called the optimod. It's a magic box to a lot of people. Everybody has something similar to it, but a lot of people think Optimod's the best. Most transmitters are pretty close to the same as far as frequency response, and as you know, most radios vary from one model to the other. So what you do is just try to tune it in for the best medium of the radios, for the extreme smallest to the extreme largest. And we stretch it a little bit sometimes. Sometimes we have a little bit too much high end, but for those of you who know about transmitters and plate modulated transmitters, the Ampliphase works on a system to where you don't need a modulation transformer. It basically splits the RF signal up and divides it into 135 degrees out of phase with each other, sends it through the two PA cavities separately, 135 degrees out of phase, and the cancellation or the addition creates the amplitude modulation in a combiner stage, and that goes through the antenna and on out into the radios. It's an efficient system.
It's as important to have people on board who can live in a little community, because unlike a radio station on shore, you actually live the job 24 hours a day. And some people might say you're living on top of each other, but I don't know. As long as everyone gets on well, you don't have any problems, and thank goodness, touch wood, we have a great team and nobody ever has any problems at the moment.
I'm really going to have to get you lot trained to bring me a cup of coffee in the morning, you know? It doesn't work otherwise. We can't have a mailing address in the UK or in the majority of European countries. It's a very simple address to remember, only one set of numbers. A few people think that we are actually in America, and I can't quite understand how they think we managed to reach Europe, but that's not the point. Mail takes anything from a week to a month. It just depends on how things manage to tie in. But specific dates have to be obviously given for a good time in advance. But the mail is then repackaged and sent to the ship. It goes to Spain and comes from Spain by boat with all the other supplies to the ship. So if you catch it just right, it can get here within a week, but that's sort of more a bonus rather than the normal run-of-the-mill way it arrives. The address is simply New York 1158, and that's it in the USA. There's no complications. Americans are renowned for having long zip codes and numbers in their addresses. We've managed to get a PO box which number is the same as the zip code, which is quite a rare occurrence and quite a feat, I think, and it makes it easy to remember. And it works because the mail comes through in very large quantities. This is from the Netherlands. It's particularly about a record that only we have been playing, and I know it's only us. It's a band called Latin Quarter, and the song Radio Africa. A person whose name is Toon van Rijn from Holland has said that they've tried to get it virtually everywhere in the Netherlands and haven't been able to so far. Please, can you tell us how to get it? That's the sort of questions we get asked. That will get replied to, definitely. This one's from England, from Essex, a young lady in Chelmsford who wants to know where they can get hold of the Loving Awareness album. Could be tricky, but I'll try and give an answer when I write. It's just a nice letter. They're not formal at all, no dear sirs. It's, hi Tom, I'd like to say how great it is to have you all back on the airwaves again. The music's great. Please could you play something for my friends, relatives, etc. Can you tell us how to get t-shirts? Can you tell us how to get the Loving Awareness album in this instance? That's just two from a small pile that I've got down here to get round to replying to. There's a huge number, and obviously it's impossible to reply to everybody. But if you don't get a reply the first time, just keep trying, is all I can say, really. Because you can understand, if you get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of letters, it's just impossible to reply to everyone. But we do our best.
Special announcement to the Universal Love Mission Intergalactic. Your mission is the preservation of creation. Special request to the observer posse, you know. This is the voice of loving awareness. Dread Eye Special Mission reporting to Love Leader 1. Come in, Love Leader 1. Mighty 3, Radio Caroline. Once there's love all over the world, one's gonna take it away. Once there's love all over the world, one's gonna take it away. Once there's love all over the world, one's gonna take it away.
Have a coffee for you, mate. It's a lovely day. It's nice and shiny. Probably a bit earlier than you really wanted to get up. This is all very genuine. Awake? You're going to fall asleep again?
Right, isn't it?
It's a lovely day, I assure you.
Very sunny.
It's worth getting up. It's really sunny.
Okay then.
A load of Belgian fishermen here today.
Oh, are they?
Yeah, they've gone now. They've been. Yeah, it's a nice day. Okay?
Yes. Fine. Thank you very much, Tom.
He was actually claimed by Caroline in the most peculiar way when the ship was being fitted out in Spain. Basically, he was thrown into the port, into the water with a weight on him, so as intended to be drowned by some people in the port area. Luckily, Chicago, our engineer at the time, jumped in the water and rescued him, and thank God saved his life. So he's been here ever since, and he's very popular with the listeners. Lots of letters sort of say, I love to Raffles. He'll move around parts of the ship he knows pretty well. There's certain areas he's a little bit wary of, but then suddenly he'll surprise you and appear, say, on the bridge, or someplace he's never been before, and which is a good sign. All the time he's getting more and more confident.
You're trying to find some peace of mind in this crazy world we live in? Well, we're here to help. We're Caroline, Europe's voice of loving awareness, where the music is our magic.
Talk about provisions with the captain tomorrow.
Right, okay. Well, the captain usually does the nighttime watch while everyone else sleeps. During the day, well, all the disc jockeys are up and I'm up all the time, so
yeah, well,
we split it up amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I do a watch at night, and if any boats come or anything happens in the day, I have to get up anyway and sort it out. Mostly night work for me. Right.
It's day work with me with keeping the jennies in straight order, so we can stay on air at all times. We usually do a 6-monthly survey on the engine, on each of the engines, and we just keep filters, lube oil changes and all that every week. The AC generators which work the transmission, we only run on one generator at one time, and it's approximately a ton a day, and the water situation is around half a ton a day, depending on how much it's used. If there's a lot of washing done, or
the showers and that.
Yeah, showers. It goes up and down per week. Sometimes we use a ton, sometimes a half a ton. It comes through an automatic pump to a hydrofor tank, which stays pressurized at all times. So you feed everything off that for the ship in the fresh water, and she's very stable. We have 40 tons of concrete below to counteract the mast. You would call it an extra special trawler, like she's been up in the Arctic, and she's been very well built, stable wise. I'd go actually anywhere in her if she was still on the fishing. She was built in Germany, 1960. She belonged, I believe, to the Germans for 1 year. Sold to Ross Fishing Industries, where she stayed for 18 years. And then she was turned over. She was bought by a salvage company who had her for 2 years and went bankrupt. So she was bought then for the radio station after that. Make sure that navigation-wise that she's showing all our lights and making sure that the engine and generators and all the pumps are working in working order. We test them every week. So as if we do get a problem, we can get underway in a matter of 3/4 of an hour to an hour. Because it's happened once already. We did break a drift and we were on the bank before we realised it. So it still took us 3/4 of an hour, but she didn't go right on the bank, she just bounced off it. We got her away in time.
Check the position about twice a day with the radar, or if the weather's okay, I can sight beacons and buoys and get bearings off them and put it on the chart and make sure we're in the right position. If it broke, then we just have to get it underway as quick as possible. We've got a smaller spare anchor that we can drop, in an emergency until we get the engine underway. And then we just go out into open water and stay out there in safety.
Shift to the Citizen Radio with the written broadcast. 2113. Navigational information. One vessel inward bound presently using the North Edinburgh Channel. And one vessel outward bound using the North Edinburgh Channel in approximately 40 minutes time. Tidal information, the tide of Walton 2.6, Margate 3.5, Southend 4.5, and at Tilbury 5.5. And the broadcast division radio.
With a constant variety of music, this is Caroline. We started with Stevie Nicks and Leather and Lace, Elton John from the album Breaking Hearts, and Did He Shoot Her? Todd Rundgren, Can We Still Be Friends? And that's Joni Mitchell, and Turn Me On, I'm a Radio.
The legal position of Caroline hasn't altered between 64 and 84. It's exactly the same position today as it was then. There is absolutely no difference. The only thing that has happened is that the laws of the UK have altered in relation to English companies, etc. I mean, in other words, the British government have said the ship can be there broadcasting because it's entitled to be there broadcasting internationally. And we cannot make that illegal because we haven't got the power to do it. If they had, they would have done it, of course. The socialist government at the time, under Harold Wilson, who didn't have a mandate from the British public to actually pass that law, incidentally.
Everything is done from outside the United Kingdom. It's and indeed outside European countries where there are laws against offshore broadcasting stations. We are in international waters. We don't come into contact with the authorities. Occasionally a boat will come out and circle us and wave and say hello, but that's as far as it goes. A little bit formal sometimes to start with, but once we say hello and wave, then they say hello back or whatever. I mean, it never lasts very long. And they just circle the ship a couple of times and go away. Only ever happens on calm days, I've noticed that. I mean, today is an ideal day.
The offices are for selling the advertising, which of course the biggest part of the act that affects us, are in America. The companies that are advertising with us are either American, Canadian, Australian, etc. So that, you've got your international advertising. So obviously there are 101 countries outside of the United Kingdom, or 150 or something. So, I mean, obviously any one of those countries could buy ads, and Caroline is quite legit.
Most of the time it's totally free choice, and that is what really sets us apart from most of the ILR stations, certainly the major national networks, and we just keep it totally freestyle.
It's an interesting thought for you, but it is probably the only free radio station that exists on the planet. I mean, that's worthwhile. I mean, based on, and I don't mean free, but, it is everything that's on the ship is controlled by, the disc jockeys, and I'm sure by interviewing and talking that we've discovered, they have enormous latitude, freedom to do what they want in terms of music and everything else. you know, obviously there's some kind of direction, album format, this kind of thing, but and which we've changed from pop, you know, because we wanted to come back and do something different. I mean, we didn't want to come back and start competing with the Capitals and all these Radio 1s. We didn't want to sort of directly, we wanted to add another service so that the public were getting something out of it. You know, instead of just saying, well, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, you know, do we listen to the single from the latest on, you know, Radio 1, do we listen to it on Capital, do we listen to it on Caroline? And it's the same record on all three, and, you know, so, I mean, that's like a pointless exercise in terms of the public. So we're trying to actually do something different. The freedom thing is very important. Very, very, I mean, to me it's very important. And obviously, there's less and less and less freedom on one scale, and yet there seems to be a movement of people wanting to break out of the shackles as well, you see. So, you know, there's a sort of, you know, the 1984 Orwell thinking, which had moved, you know, the computer's taking over, we're just becoming like servants to the machine. That has happened to a great degree.
On the North Sea, on 963 kilohertz, this is Caroline 319. It's midnight, and unfortunately, Radio Caroline has to close down for this evening. We hope that you will rejoin us at 6 o'clock in the morning with Dave Richards and The Breakfast Show. On behalf of everybody on board the Ross Revenge, this is Stuart Vincent wishing you a pleasant evening. Good evening, Europe.
Well, every night at close down, we take a look at the way that the transmitter's working, check the currents on the different valves, and make sure that they're within limits. That way you can always tell if a valve is going down in emission, and it gives you a chance to replace it before it might fail and put you off the air. We originally were looking for Continental Electronics transmitters because we used Continental Electronics transmitters with our other ship and were very happy with them. Well, when I was over in America looking for equipment, there wasn't any Continental Electronics equipment on the market at all. And so I had to look at various other possibilities as they existed then. We bought it up in Canada, and the radio station that had used it had it in regular operation during 6 years. And it had been immaculately maintained. The condition of the transmitter then was really as new, and you can see today that even after it's made the journey from the United States across to Spain and then fitted into the ship, and it's had about a year wear and tear now out on the ship, and it's still really in very good clean condition.
It is important to get over that people, you know, literally millions of supporters known as anoraks in the movement, you know, and I've got to be the number one anorak, let's face it, have, well, I mean, just their energy and their, I mean, we've had some amazing things happen, you know. The Canadian Mike Loves It getting married on the North Ship. I mean, I'm just flashing on these various things. If you run the sequence through of all the amazing events, you know, the things on the sandbank, Chicago hangs in there, will not leave, you know, he won't leave that ship, you know, and he hangs and battles with the sea. I mean, crazy stuff. I mean, and he wins, you know. I mean, he saved it. I mean, on his own, I mean, with, you know, a couple of disc jockeys, you know, a couple of guys who said, well, we'll stay with you. The crews left and everything. That was it for them, the lifeboats. You know, saying, well, I'm going to battle. And he fought and went, you know. And it's very much about, Caroline, the individual against the system. Whatever the system, whether the system is the government, whether the system is weather, it's a continual climb. It's a continual climb of Mount Everest. It's the continuous, it's all the time. It's never allowing that spirit to die. So that you know, there is that challenge there is the battle, there is you know, you're alive. There are things happening. And that's what Caroline is about. And that's why, by the way, the enormous number of people who've come out of Caroline and been successful everywhere. It's extraordinary. It is really uncanny, and I think the biggest part of that is that when they come to Caroline, there's that, you know, and everybody, I mean, Tony Blackburn used to say he never got any memos to be told what to do. They're on their own. I mean, they walk onto that ship and they're on their own. And they get it together very fast. That feeling of you're there, you do it, you know, we trust you, we know you'll know how to do it. And they do, and it happens, and it's magic.
Loving awareness, Radio Caroline. Love and good music, Radio Caroline. Love and good music, Radio Caroline.
You're watching Pirate Radio Night live from Frinton Beach. Yes, August the 14th. It was all happening, I tell you, 41 years ago. Don't forget you can buy a lot of these products, DVDs, books, posters, a whole lot of stuff from the radiofab.com website. Check it out. There's some great bits of memorabilia on there. Coming up after the break, we'll be meeting one of my old friends from the 1980s and one of the top disc jockeys from Laser 558.